things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion? I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
Ripon Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Ripon Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
Multiverse broadcasting system initiated.
Hello.
Lasers.
Multiverse connection established.
Lasers.
Hello.
Multiverse connection secure.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
This is My Life DIY, and
Hi, this is JoJo.
Hi, my name is Ash.
Hey everybody, it's AJ the Ripon Rabbit.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light.
And you're now listening
to Dark Wolf's Den.
The Dark Wolf's Den Show on Ripon Common Sense Radio.
Are ghosts real?
We had 1,000 hours of continuous communication with the spirit world.
Does time travel actually exist?
The laws of physics seem to be compatible with time machines.
You know, sometimes I wonder about reincarnation. Don't you?
A 4-year-old boy in Adelaide, Australia, has told his parents that he used to be Britain's Princess Diana.
What would happen if the world found out that aliens were real?
I didn't say disclosure would be easy, but what is the alternative?
To establish a space force as the 6th branch of the armed forces.
We have so many questions and yet so little time, so to have you here, the pleasure is all mine.
Coming to you from a secret cave, hidden deep within the wilderness. This is the Dark Wolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and we are broadcasting live across the multiverse from a secret cave hidden deep within the wilderness of Tennessee. That's right, we're ripping through the electromagnetic soup, tearing through the atmosphere, and tunneling away into your radio like a quantum particle. This is the Dark Wolf's Den Show for Wednesday, October 13th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you, especially to kick off a new weekend. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it is the new weekend here on Ripon Common Sense Radio, and we are covering yet another state of mystery. This time, we're going to be covering a state that I've spent more than my fair share of time in, a state that is literally just a few miles from the location in which I sit. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, that of course is the great state of Kentucky. From monsters to little green men and ghosts and so much more, and so little time to get there. We're going to cover all that tonight, but first, let's go ahead and check in our YouTube chat rooms, both on the Ripon Rabbit Hole as well as the Dark Wolf's Den Show YouTubes, and see who all we have over here tonight. And it looks like we've got quite a few people. Good evening, my fine friends, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to see everybody here. Like Guidelines Strike Jeremy Forbes, glad to have you here. Bud says, hello, good people. Hello, Jeremy. Errol Taylor, hello, Mr. Hicks. Hello, Errol, glad to see you. Sandy B, hi, y'all. Glad to see you, Sandy. JoJo's saying hi over in the Ripon Rabbit Hole chat. Alva Yarder saying hello, glad to see you, Alva. Raider Champion with the hello, dropping that music link if you're interested in our theme song called Wonderland by Michael Musco featuring Chick. The link is dropped right there by Raider Champion. And you hear the dogs even trying to get on the radio. They know when there we go. They're trying to talk to us. And we've, sorry about that, guys. We've got quite a few people here. Glad to see everybody. As well as Terry Taggart dropping in over the Dark Wolf's Den Show chat and My Life DIY. And as you guys know, before we can dig deep down the rabbit hole of the paranormal, we have two more little fun segments to do. The first of which we call Today in History. On this day in 1884, Greenwich in London is established as the universal time meridian of longitude. We've all heard of Greenwich Mean Time, right? This is the line in which the other time zones were drawn out of, and that was established on this day in 1884. And that is today's segment of Today in History. You know, that is pretty neat. Less than 130 years ago, time zones were created. That's kind of cool. Really sucks, though, because that also created jet lag, right? But I got a question. When the world ends, will it end at the same time everywhere? I would suggest it wouldn't, because of time zones, right? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to our next segment, which we call... Say what? Our quote of the day today comes from Mark Twain. He says, and I quote, "When the end of the world comes, I want to be in Kentucky because everything there happens 20 years after it happens anywhere else, end quote. Once again, that is Mark Twain, and that is today's segment of
Say What?
Well, I guess that answers our previous question, right? The end of the world will be late in Kentucky, which is good for the ghosts and the aliens and the cryptids that inhabited it. And that's where we're going to start tonight, ladies and gentlemen, with the cryptids of Kentucky and our old friend Ben Miller.
The first I would like to talk about is known as the Demon Leaper. While the name might not sound that alarming, it is actually considered a gargoyle.
I disagree, Ben. A demon anything is not a creature that I want to run into in the woods, right? Like a demon frog, right? This is probably a frog that is dangerous to me, right? There's a reason it's got the demon in front of its name. However, what's even more intriguing is I can recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, this is the first time I believe we have run across a gargoyle in our states series, albeit a state really close to mine, interestingly enough, but a gargoyle just the same. Let's see what this gargoyle has to offer.
This creature has been seen mainly around the Walnut Street Baptist Church in Louisville since at least the 1880s. Detailed descriptions are hard to come by, but most say it is a large being with shiny leathery skin, massive wings, and it has very long talons. In some of the original stories, people likened it to that of a bat, while later stories claimed it more resembled a large primate.
Actually, to me, that says something a little different. That may just be two different perspectives of sight. One person or a group of people seeing it with the wings extended would remind them of more of a bat, whereas a gargoyle with its wings wrapped around itself would probably take on more of a primate type look, right?
It tends to roost high up on the roof of the church, but it has also been spotted on other buildings as well.
And of course, in European folklore, they roosted on top of churches in high buildings as a protection, believe it or not.
In some of the sightings, it is seen flying around, while at other times it will simply bound from rooftop to rooftop. For the most part, it doesn't seem very dangerous, since the only attacks recorded involved the Demon Leaper either poking someone or scratching them.
The fact that it has not really harmed a human aside from maybe a scratch is actually quite common. The idea that gargoyles would actually fight off and ward off evil spirits and creatures and protect humans. So gargoyles, even though I kind of joked about the name earlier of the Demon Leaper, a pretty cool name, I gotta say. I kind of like that name. Again, I don't want to run into anything in the woods with that name, but a gargoyle, as scary and grotesque and crazy as they may look and seem, they are actually more of a Mothman style protector creature. Perhaps what the Mothman actually was maybe a gargoyle, because remember, it seemed to be a protector of the town, more of a ward of what is to come, right? Like the bridge collapse. After that, it disappeared. Perhaps it knew what was to come, and it did hang off that bridge, much like a bat, much like a gargoyle, right?
This creature has been seen on more than one occasion, but even as such, not a lot of information is available. I should mention that within this spectrum, in nearby Elizabethtown, people have reported seeing Kentucky's own version of the Mothman since 1938. With other reports of the same creature on the opposite side of the state in Ashland. Unlike most sightings of this famed cryptid, in 2008 a farmer named Harley Foster claimed he was actually chased by this creature when he found it taking refuge in his barn. I mentioned this version of Mothman not in an attempt to talk about one of my favorite cryptids, but to simply question if the Demon Leaper may in fact be a Mothman. They seem fairly similar, other than that no one has mentioned the Leaper having red eyes, but as stated, there isn't too much detail about that creature.
When we hear a number of case files like that, it really does make you wonder if there is more of a species of Mothman type creatures, or perhaps gargoyles, opposed to just one-off incident, if you will. Perhaps Point Pleasant, all being the most famous, was just the first one to report it in such a more recent time, right? Perhaps it is a series of species, I should say, of gargoyle or other type creature opposed to the one Mothman that we know about from Point Pleasant. It could be very widespread, as we're starting to see in these states, and it only seems to be growing from here. But what do you guys think? Perhaps the Mothman is the gargoyle, one and the same, or are they different? Go ahead, put a 1 in the chat room if you think perhaps Mothman and gargoyle are just misidentified versions of the same creature. Go ahead, put a 2 in the chat room if you think, nope, you're talking about 2 separate creatures altogether. And go ahead and put a 3 in the chat room if you're not really sure either way.
The next cryptid that is roaming about Kentucky is just known as a lizard man. This creature is said to stand on 2 legs at around 6 feet tall, has brownish green skin that is covered in scales. It has both webbed feet and hands, and very prominent gills on the side of its head. Over the years, there has been a discrepancy as to the size of its eyes, with original reports saying that they were abnormally large, while more recent sightings claim they are fairly small.
And yes, though there is a discrepancy here, the discrepancy itself is actually kind of an anomaly.
This is an oddity when it comes to cryptids, since over time, sizes tend to become exaggerated rather than being reduced.
Have you ever heard of a big fish story? And the reason they call it a big fish story is every time the fish story is told, the fish gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? That's kind of the exaggeration that humans tend to follow. However, in this case, it seems a little different.
Originally, this being was seen in Louisville in 1878. It was called a wild man, but the descriptions of it claimed that it was covered in scales, had eyes twice as large as a human's, and it stood around 6'5". This creature was apparently captured, but nothing more is stated about it.
However, as time would have it, it would not turn out to be the only lizard man seen in that area. And speaking of being seen, let's go ahead and see what we have for that last question here. The question was, do you think Mothman and the gargoyle species are one in the same, or are they 2 different creatures? 1, if you think they are one in the same. 2, if you think they're 2 different creatures. And 3, if you're not sure either way. Let's see what you guys said here. And it looks like, starting in the Dark Wolf's Den Show chat, I think we've got the puppy calmed down now. We should be good for a minute, guys. But starting in the Dark Wolf's Den Show chat, we got My Life DIY with the 2 says, nope, they're different species altogether, completely different things. Terry Taggart with the 3, not quite sure. Our fellow fence rider over there, Terry Taggart, most of the time with the 3, and I love it. JoJo's with the 1, yes, they are 2 different. They are the same, one and the same. The gargoyle and the Mothman, one species that is misidentified as another and has been spreading throughout the different states. Basil Battle Dragon, welcome, glad to see you, Basil. With the 2 says, no, Jerry, wrong. They're 2 different species altogether. They're not the same. And this amazingly seems to be pretty much across the board over here in the Ripon Rabbit Hole chat too. Alviarder says nope, not the same at all. Raider Champion, no, not quite sure with the 2.2, but definitely probably no. Sandy B, nope, 2 different species. Errol Taylor again with the two different species. So that's interesting. Not quite the response I really expected to see. A little more spread out than I thought it would be, but that's really cool. So I gotta say, personally, I'm kind of a 1 on this. I'm kind of starting to think, because we're getting these different Mothman reports across different places, that might be the case. And yes, My Life, they were very much used as a protective ward off evil spirits from buildings. Apparently, they would come alive at night and fight off and guard off the evil and the different things trying to get into the building. So amazingly enough, as crazy as they look, My Life says we've got those all over Chicago. I'm sure a lot of big cities also, like New York probably has quite a few of them too, right? I mean, that's what I would think. And remember, if you are listening around the world on the radio, you are more than welcome to join us in either chat room on the Dark Wolf's Den Show or the Ripon Rabbit Hole YouTubes, of course, even if you're Lizard Man, right? And of course, that's what we left off on. There was the Lizard Men. We've had a case file already, and now we're going to hear even more because that one that disappeared, turns out it wasn't the only time a lizard man was spotted in Kentucky.
In the fall of 1966, in Stephensport, a man simply known as Joseph saw a similar creature at 1 in the morning. He states that he was sleeping in his bed when he awoke to the sound of something hitting his house. When he got up, he looked out the bedroom window, but no one was there. He then walked into the living room, and when he pulled back the curtain, he saw the face of a lizard man staring back at him through the window. In this report, he said this creature stood at least 5'6" to 6 feet tall, and by all appearances, his body was human-like, but covered in scales. When he pulled back the curtain, he claimed both he and the creature became startled, and it quickly ran off into the forest and into the river by his home. Joseph watched the being run away and couldn't believe how fast it moved. In his statement, he mentioned that the face he saw was too realistic to have been someone pulling a prank on him, and with how fast it was, ruled out human movements.
And this seems to me like it would be probably a juvenile of the species. If this is a lizard man species living on the earth and not an alien, let's be clear. There are those that argue it could be alien. I could not argue against it, but let's argue that instead that they are an underground living type creature, right? Perhaps they have a full family structure, because this seems to me like a younger, more naive version, one that got caught, for instance, right?
Adding to these sightings, on October of 1975, a man named Clarence Cable from Milton reported he saw a very large bipedal lizard man walking in the forest around his junkyard. He claimed it had a forked tongue, bulging eyes like a frog, and its skin was dull white with black stripes, and it was covered in little quarter-sized speckles. The only discrepancy here from all the other stories is Clarence thought the creature was 15 feet tall. If the sighting was real, I would assume he misjudged that height.
Perhaps he did, or perhaps that is a full-grown lizard man, right? We know the short one was seen. Perhaps that was a juvenile. Perhaps the mid-range was the first one that was seen, the 6'5" one. Just because it's the first one seen doesn't mean it was the original height, right? We don't know what age or quality that lizard man was. It could have been midlife or full-grown. We don't know. Assumption could be made that the full-grown lizard man would be a 15-foot person, right? It could be wrong, but then again, we don't have a lot of lizard man biology to go on, right?
What is really interesting about these encounters is that they all revolve around the Ohio River, which, that body of water has had many reports of similar aquatic creatures, begs the question that maybe something is living in that river, and it travels around quite a bit. Staying in the water would be an easy way to keep hidden from the public eye.
So you even have a large body of water to both hide in and support a colony of said type creatures.
Now, our next stories about cryptids takes a very interesting twist, since the more I looked into them, the more I realized a shocking trend. Kentucky has a major dogman problem. The most well-known one was claimed to roam about the Land Between the Lakes National Recreation Area. I must say that to me, even reading that name, puts me in the mind of something mysterious. This area, which is frequently abbreviated to LBL, lies between Tennessee and Kentucky, surrounded by Lake Barkley and Kentucky Lake.
And of course, we have heard about this creature before, right? We've talked about it on the show before. And this area, this land between the lakes, is an area that I've been a large number of times. It was an area that I used to go fishing in a lot. I've been down there quite a few times. I've never seen anything out of the ordinary down there, but this story suggests that at one time there once was.
According to legend, this family getaway spot may hold a dark past. Stories of this creature state that it has glowing red eyes, stands 7 feet tall, has wolf-like features, is covered in hair, and has very long claws and fangs. Most reports claim that people first became aware of the creature's presence by the sound of strange howls in the night. Stories about this being have been passed on since the 1800s, where it was originally thought to be a man who transformed into a beast at nightfall, much like a werewolf.
Also much like another creature that we've encountered many times before on this show.
Others claim it is actually the spirit of a shaman who chose the wolf form as a skinwalker and was killed by his tribe for abusing this power. All others see this as simply a dogman. Reports from the 1900s claim that settlers in the area would find bison torn to shreds, half-eaten, and the bodies having huge claw marks on them. One story from 1973 says that a group of college students were camping at the LBL, and they became aware of something watching them from the woods. As the night went on, loud sounds of howling could be heard. It then became apparent that something was circling their camp, moving very quickly through the forest. Finally, the group saw a pair of glowing red eyes moving towards them, and they decided to get into their VW bus and go home. As they traveled down the road, they saw the shadow of a large creature running after them, and at one point, the bus was hit with something. At that moment, it felt like something had a hold of their vehicle and was keeping them from leaving. Finally, the creature let go, and the campers safely made it home. When they inspected the van, they saw large claw marks in the metal covering the engine.
What is really wild to me is that I've lived in this area for a long time off and on, and in all my years here, I have never heard some of these stories. So as a local, I'm kind of surprised by some of this.
Another story about the same area claims that in 1980, a family decided to camp in the area. Once enough time had passed and no one had heard from them, police converged to investigate the area. They came across the grisly scene as the family was found mutilated in their camper, and the half-eaten remains of one of them was found actually lodged into a tree. All of what remained of their bodies was said to be covered in long claw marks. As stories like this go, some claim it was covered up to save tourism.
And I could definitely see them covering up the deaths in order to try to save tourism in the area. Again, that last story is the only story that I have ever actually heard of the LBL monster. With that said, that's not to say that it didn't exist. Once again, they probably did cover it up, and only recently, I guess the information has actually come to light. And checking the clock, it looks like we have time for just one more cryptid before we get to the break. A cryptid that we have seen in a number of different states. You guys know who I'm talking about, don't you?
The Spotsville Monster. This creature was talked about for many years, but the most well-documented encounters started in 1975 in Henderson County. No one is sure what this creature is, but it appeared to be a Bigfoot that had red eyes, stood around 8 feet tall, and only had 4 toes on each foot. This encounter lasted for many years, as it first terrorized the family with the last name Nunley, and then took interest in their neighbor, who was a firefighter. After the family moved out, the firefighter later claimed to have frequent encounters for many years up until August of 2004. What makes this unique is it entails this creature utilizing a type of invisible portal, it being tied with UFOs, and the fact that it could appear and disappear at will.
So Bigfoot and UFOs is something that in the last decade or so we've really seen an increase in the correlation between the two. The other thing about this case is the portals and the invisibility. The invisibility part we've seen for a while, to the point that even I came up with a theory that it could be, well, I'm not sure I'm the only one who's come up with this theory, but perhaps they produce some type of oil or something in their fur that would allow them to turn the right way in the light and seem to disappear. Even though they would be standing in the same place, like a camouflage, they would just bend the light around them. Quite intriguing thoughts about this, but this is one of the cases that brings together all of those aspects.
Going a step farther, the firefighter even had an encounter where the creature utilized telepathy to speak to him when the two accidentally came face to face. Oh, and did I forget to mention that it rarely left footprints and bullets had no effect on it?
This is sounding much more alien than Bigfoot-like, unless they are just one and the same. What if Bigfoot is the aliens? One of many species, right? We know of the Greys. We know of the Longheads. We know of the Tall Whites. Perhaps the Bigfoots is just yet another alien species, like the Chewbacca's, right? Perhaps George Lucas knew a little more than what we thought he knew. However, Kentucky has another type of cryptid that we've seen a little bit more of recently, and we even did a full show about these, the sea creature cryptids. Believe it or not, Kentucky has a couple of those too.
Harrington Lake is said to be home to a 15-foot creature described as a water pig, and it has been sighted frequently since 1924. Not to be outdone, Calks Lake and Reynolds Lake both boast a 40 to 50 foot giant snake that is said to make the waters its home.
And yet another cryptid that you guys may remember we did a show about in Kentucky was Barilla. So just a quick shout out on that cryptid creature also. A number of cryptid creatures in Kentucky, right guys? And there's so much more paranormal to get to in the second half. Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and you're listening to the Dark Wolf's Den Show exclusively on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, the Ripon Rabbit Hole. You guys sit tight and we'll be right back after these messages. Don't you touch that dial. That's right.
We gotta stoke the fires and run off the men in black. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Oh yeah, your weekend has begun and is well underway. Hi everyone, it's AJ the Ripon Rabbit. Are you enjoying the Dark Wolf's Den state of mystery for Kentucky? I know I am. If you are and you haven't done so already, please make sure to thumb up that video, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell. You'll get our notifications every time we go live. We're here every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights, bringing you the very best of common sense radio, the Ripon Rabbit Hole. Jerry Hicks and the Dark Wolf's Den radio show will return again tomorrow night, Thursday, October 14th. A look at haunted graveyards. Ooh, howl along with Jerry as he looks at some of the top and most famous haunted graveyards. Then I'll return Friday night, October 15th for Freaky Friday, a freaky journey down the rabbit hole of creepy, freaky, and downright scary tales. Join me at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, as we celebrate a Freaky Friday together, October 15th. Then Saturday night, October 16th, my father's birthday, by the way. Happy birthday, Dad. I'll have more to say on Saturday, I'm sure. But come along with me as we dive through and explore the fascinating rabbit hole of this year's craziest Halloween costumes, as well as a few do-it-yourself costumes that we'll suggest to you. So if you don't know exactly what you want to dress up for as Halloween this year, which is, by the way, a weekend Halloween, it's going to be Sunday, October 31st, which means Friday and Saturday should be full of costume parties. We're going to dive through the rabbit hole of the craziest costumes of 2021, Saturday, October October 16th. Again, starts at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, as all shows do. And then we'll end out the weekend right together with you. Sunday, October 17th, a look at trust but verify. That's right. We're going to dive through the rabbit hole of what it means to trust but verify, and just exactly how do you verify information in a world of disinformation and fake news? How exactly are you able to weed through the smoke and the mirrors so that you can get to the truth instead of just blindly following the age-old confidence trick? We're going to have a ton of tips and resources that you're going to definitely want to pay attention to, and that will end out the weekend right together with you. Sunday night, October 17th. Now, if you haven't done so already, please hop on over to our website, riponrabbithole.com, and sign up for your exclusive Backstage VIP pass. Absolutely free to do so. We'll return to tonight's State of Mystery, the Dark Wolf's Den radio show for Wednesday, October 13th. You're listening to the Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, the Ripon Rabbit Hole.
Reestablishing multiverse connection. Connection reestablished and secure.
This is My Life DIY, and
Hi, this is JoJo.
Hi, my name is Ash.
Hey everybody, it's AJ the Ripon Rabbit.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light.
And you're now listening
to Dark Wolf's Den.
The Dark Wolf's Den Show on Ripon Common Sense Radio.
If you were meant to be controlled, you would have come with a remote, but you didn't. And that's why you listen to the Dark Wolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and welcome back to the second half of the Dark Wolf's Den Show for Wednesday, October the 13th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just tuning in tonight, we are going over the State of Mystery of Kentucky. We went through a number of cryptid stories in the first half, from the sea creatures to the dogmen and even lizard men that roam the area of Kentucky. And there's so much more paranormal in the state of Kentucky. We have a story coming up now, a UFO story that is probably unlike any you have ever heard before.
It's just after midnight on Monday, January 14th, 2002. A CSX train is leaving the railroad yard in Russell, Kentucky. The train and its crew are hauling a line of coal to Shelbyana, Kentucky, 113 miles away.
What would normally be a standard routine trip.
The night is a typical winter night for the crew. Cold air howls through the cracks of the windows, and there are all sorts of animals near the tracks hoping to find something to eat. As the train passes milepost 41, the crew sees that there are bright lights around the bend ahead of them. Normally this means that there is another train coming on the other track. One crew member turns the lights off their locomotive so they wouldn't blind the oncoming crew.
Again, this is a pretty standard practice. However, what would follow was anything but standard.
As they go around the bend, the electrical instruments of their locomotive begin to malfunction. The computer flashes on and off repeatedly, the speed recorder fluctuates, and the locomotive's engine dies. The emergency brakes are designed to engage in the event of a power loss. As the brakes initiate, alarm bells start ringing. The crew members have no idea what is going on with their locomotive. At this moment, the crew realizes that the lights are not those of an oncoming train. They see 3 oval-shaped metallic objects just ahead of them. The objects seem to be shining some sort of spotlight toward the river below them. The train keeps rolling toward the objects at roughly 30 miles per hour and collides with one of the objects.
You heard that right, ladies and gentlemen. Whatever this oval metallic object is that is shining a light down into the water over the train tracks was just hit by a train.
The 3 objects disappear without a trace. It takes the train a while to come to a full stop after the impact. The crew get out of the locomotive and inspect the damage. Their backing locomotive looks demolished, with extensive damage to its cab, and the first 2 coal hoppers look as if the tops have been hit with a giant hammer. One crew member looks at his watch. It's 2:47 a.m. They climb back on board the locomotive to find that all the electrical devices are working again. They notify their dispatcher in Jacksonville, Florida.
What is intriguing about this case is we know in a variety of UFO case files that we have covered, the electricity tends to basically go haywire or even stop working until the objects that are causing the anomaly are gone basically from the area, and this case is no different, right? The train experienced weird electrical failures, ran into one of the oval objects, which clearly notified them that they were in the wrong place. They took off quickly and the electrical equipment went back to working. We've seen this with cars in very old lore, even all the way back to the Betty and Barney Hill episode, as well as a variety of other different case files that have suggested that for whatever reason the gravitational fields or whatever fields are created around these craft are actually intensely messing with electronic equipment.
He seems reluctant to believe their tale and thinks it's just a joke. After convincing him that the collision really did happen, he tells the crew to examine their train closely to make sure it can stay on the rails.
But you can't blame the dispatcher though, right? I mean, you would really think that the guys were messing with you if they said, hey, this is train 103, we just hit a UFO. You would think that the guys are pulling your leg. So I can't say I blame the dispatcher particularly in that case.
Then he instructs them to limp into the old railroad yard in Paintsville, Kentucky. The CSX crew's night is far from over. When they arrive at Paintsville, they are met by an army of workers none of them have ever seen before. They are taken to the old yard office, and the strange men interrogate them for hours. Their cell phones are confiscated, and their requests to talk to the road foreman or train master are denied.
At this point, it sounds like one of the many alphabet agencies has stuck their nose once again where it doesn't belong in an attempt to cover this up. And I find that even more astonishing if the train didn't hit anything, or if it had been a hoax, or if they had just hit a random object like the side of a bridge, for instance, and tried to cover it up with a UFO story. Why would the agencies be so very interested in both the pilot or the captains of the train or the cars themselves?
When they are finally led back outside, they see that the train has been separated from the two locomotives and the first two hoppers. They are now parked under a large tent-like structure. The crew are led off the property and told not to mention any of the night's events to anyone. The crew gets 8 hours of rest time, and when they go back by the Paintsville yard the next day, there is no sign of the locomotives, two cars, or the tent.
And once again, why don't say anything if there's nothing to be seen, right? Hello, Carol's Cookies. Glad to see you here. Raider Champion Ufo. Yeah, this is one of the strangest cases I've ever found. A UFO and a train. I thought you guys might enjoy this because especially like Sandy and my life, I know you guys are big train heads over there. So in covering up stuff that is classic alphabet agency lore, or I mean, not even lore practice, right? This is what they do. They cover up anything they don't want anyone else to know about it. And it was a lot easier back in the day when communications were a lot less than they are now, right? But yeah, that's the... this is one of the strangest case files I think I've run across in a while.
The one crew member's watch still reads 2:47 a.m. till this day. Railroad employees whisper about the incident amongst each other, but they refuse to come forward with any information in fear that they may lose their jobs.
And once again, one of the strangest UFO case files I think I have heard pretty much ever, right? And that's one thing I like to do on this show is present case files that you haven't heard on every talk show ever, right? Case files that fall through the cracks and get buried. And this is definitely one that falls through the cracks. One that only very recently did even I hear about, but one that is incredibly intriguing. You wouldn't think a train, especially in this day and age, would come anywhere close to running into a UFO, especially at 30 miles an hour, right? But it only goes to show that the occupants perhaps were a little more preoccupied with something else. Perhaps they were looking at one of the many spirits or ghosts that haunt the Kentucky area.
Western Kentucky University.
And yet again, a trend that we have found across almost every single state that we have covered, the haunted university.
Western Kentucky University in Bowling Green was founded in 1906 and is known for numerous hauntings across campus. Pierce Ford Tower is haunted by a student who fell down an elevator shaft. The young man was on his way back from a shower, and his spirit is seen forever roaming the halls in a towel.
Thank goodness he had a towel on, right? Otherwise, that might be a very X-rated ghost. And that is one thing I don't think we've ever really had reports of, is a nude ghost. That is an interesting thought, right?
The apparition of a woman named Casparella by staff and students is seen and felt throughout Potter Hall. She is believed to be the spirit of a woman who hung herself in the basement in the 1970s. Several students have even tried to communicate with her using a Ouija board, often resulting in terrifying noises, rattling drawers, objects moving on their own, and students being pestered by her spirit. Throughout campus, multiple people have reported extreme cold spots, terrifying shadow figures, and the feeling of being watched.
And once again, we have the high emotional, high trauma link with this case file, which we know has ended in a number of hauntings.
Shaker Village at Pleasant Hill. Shaker Village at Pleasant Hill was a religious community near the town of Harrodsburg, active from 1805 through 1910.
And the Shakers were a religious group, much like the Quakers, a very fundamental religious group that used to have some type of involuntary body movements when praying.
The area is a well-known haunted hotspot, with staff and visitors reporting numerous full-bodied apparitions, all varying in age and appearance. Local legend states it may be some sort of mecca for the supernatural, and there have been some crazy speculations as to why. Multiple investigations have resulted in high EMF levels, orbs in photographs, and random cold spots throughout the area. Several have reported a feeling of heaviness in the chest, breath on the back of their neck, and the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. The most disturbing haunting is said to be experienced near the pond, where witnesses have heard the sounds of infants crying in the dark, even causing several to flee the area in terror.
Does this sound like someplace you would like to visit? Go ahead, put a 1 in the chat room if you would visit a place with a history like this. Go ahead, put a 2 in the chat room if you say, no, I'm a little too scared to be visiting ghost towns of literal ghosts. And put a 3 in the chat room if you're not sure. You might consider it, but not quite sure. And while we're waiting on those answers to come in, of course, we're going to move on to our next case file. another type of case file that we've seen quite a bit across the ghost of different states, and that is battlefields. Not only do we have the universities that we've been seeing, but battlefields is another classic haunted area, and Kentucky has at least one, if not more, of those.
The Perryville Battlefield. The Perryville Battlefield State Historic Site in Perryville was home to one of the bloodiest battles in American history, so it's no wonder many spirits still remain. The Battle of Perryville, also known as the Battle of Champion Hills, occurred in 1862 and resulted in more than 7,000 casualties. The site is comprised of many old structures, and guests and staff have reported activity throughout pretty much every one of them. Reports include orbs in photographs, disembodied bootsteps, the smell of tobacco smoke, and phantom musket fire at night. Several have reported full-bodied apparitions of ghostly soldiers in uniform marching about the grounds.
I've had, and I've mentioned this before, a lot of reports from a local battleground that has reports of the same type things. Hearing the gunfire, hearing the cannon fire, hearing the soldiers marching around, and some have even seen the soldiers marching around. So I know a lot of you are going to say, well, what about war reenactors, right? They go to these battlefields and they reenact these battles. That's fair. However,
the most famous reports stemming from the battlefield are that of unsuspecting guests who report sitting through what they think are reenactments, only to watch hundreds, maybe even thousands of men disappear into thin air.
And before we continue here, let's go ahead and check and see what you guys said in the chat room. We're almost out of time here for today's episode. Ripon Rabbit Hole said, yes, absolutely, with the one. I would definitely visit a place like that. Mandanny Mall with the 2. No, thank you. I would not do that. 1, says Sandy B, but not alone. Not alone. That's fair. Sandy Jojo says 11. I think she means 1. Definitely 1. Would absolutely visit a place like that. Terry Taggart with the 2 says maybe a small tour, but wouldn't want to visit very long. 3 says My Life DIY, taking Terry Taggart's usual spot. Errol Taylor with the 1. Raider Champion with the 1.1. Everybody there saying pretty much they would, at least the majority of them. Mandanny Mall, let's go, Brandon. I absolutely love that saying. Let's go, Brandon. But remember, we were talking here about the last ghost story for the night. That kind of presents a problem to the reenactment theory, right? When the soldiers start vanishing into smoke before your very eyes, I highly doubt that these are human reenactment actors, right? Unless they're using holograms, which I doubt at that time they were. I am kind of leaning more towards this being a ghostly battle reenacting itself over and over and over a highly emotional, highly traumatic situation. Battle is never fun or good, right? So it is not a surprise that we see these in battlefields like this.
The University of Kentucky.
That's right, Kentucky has yet another haunted university. Once again, this is starting to become a theme, right?
The University of Kentucky in Lexington was...
Oh, real quick, I did miss one. My apologies, Carol's Cookies. Carol's Cookies said I would totally hang out at the haunted ghost town that has more ghosts than town, right? Sorry about that, Carol. I almost missed it. Terry Taggart, seeing it would be more believable. Well, maybe you should go to the town and check it out.
Founded in 1865 and is the largest and possibly most haunted university in the state. Students and faculty have reported an overwhelming number of paranormal occurrences around campus, including light switches flicking on and off by themselves, odd and unexplainable noises coming from dark corners, and the feeling of being watched by pretty much everywhere. In the dorms, even fully charged cell phones are known to go dead within minutes. Other electronics are prone to frequent malfunctions, and appliances often act as if they have a mind of their own. In the library, shadowy figures are seen regularly, whispering softly as they slide in and out of the rows of books. Castle Hall is said to be plagued by a mysterious, dark figure that lurks in the shadows. It's been described as tall, intimidating, and worst of all, has glowing red eyes that pierce the soul.
So, the takeaway from this story is if you're looking for a local haunt, check out your local university, right? Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, what do you guys think? Do you think Kentucky is a true state of mystery, or do you think that we're once again barking up the wrong tree? In the end, ladies and gentlemen, all you can do is look at the evidence, apply a little common sense, and you be the judge. We got to close it out. That's right, that's it for this episode of the Dark Wolf's Den Show for Wednesday, October the 13th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Ladies and gentlemen, the den may be closing, but don't you worry, the weekend fun has only just begun. That's right. Make sure you come back tomorrow, Thursday, October the 14th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, as we discuss haunted graveyards. Very fitting for the season indeed. Graveyards all across the world are full of bodies. As a matter of fact, so full people are dying just to get in, right? And some of them, once they're there, like to hang around and visit with the living, right? We'll be discussing all that and more on tomorrow, October 14th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, as we discuss haunted graveyards. That's right. And that is going to round out the kickoff of the weekend for the Dark Wolf. And then we're going to hand the baton over to our buddy AJ the Ripon Rabbit as he picks up with the Ripon Rabbit Hole live shows on Friday, October 15th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. He'll be talking about Freaky Friday. This is going to be a series of stories and different tales that are getting more and more scary as the night goes on. And the best part, most likely, they'll all be true, right? Then on Saturday, October the 16th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, AJ the Ripon Rabbit comes back with another episode of the Ripon Rabbit Hole live show. This time he's going to be talking about costumes, the crazy costumes of 2021. I want to know, did the Plague Doctor costume come back? That would be really, really cool. I kind of like that whole beaked Plague Doctor thing, right? Or perhaps you can get a mask of Slow-Mo Joe or Camelo Harris or whatever those goofy people are. They are quite scary, you know. That's something that scares me quite a bit, right? But seriously, he'll be discussing crazy costumes. So if you're looking for a costume idea on Saturday, October 16th, 2021, tune in and he may have you covered. That's right. Then on Sunday, October the 17th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, our buddy AJ the Ripon Rabbit is here to round the weekend out right once again with an episode called Trust But Verify. So trusting is okay. I'm quite an over-trusting person myself. I will trust someone until given the option, or the reason, I should say, not to. But verify what people say. Don't blindly trust anything and everything somebody says. You've got to verify the facts. Otherwise, it's just, rumors and fact-check garbage from Facebook, right? So don't always trust blindly. Make sure you verify what you trust. And AJ will be talking about how to do all that and more on Sunday, October 17th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, right here on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, the Ripon Rabbit Hole. And that will round out the weekend right here on the Ripon Rabbit Hole and the RiponRabbitHole.com. Speaking of the RiponRabbitHole.com, make sure you hop on over there and join us. We have a lot of fun stuff over there, guys. If you haven't been to this website yet, I must urge you, please go check it out. First, you're going to sign up for the 24/7 Backstage Pass. That is going to get you access to everything Backstage, the VIP Backstage Pass, excuse me. That's going to get you access to all of the rest of the website. as well as an email every Wednesday with the schedules for the Dark Wolf's Den shows and Ripon Rabbit Holes that we'll be covering all weekend long. Also, while you're over there, make sure you check out the 24/7 Backstage Lounge. That is my favorite place to hang out, and I'm sure it will quickly become yours too. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, my name's Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and you're listening to the Dark Wolf's Den radio show exclusively on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, the Ripon Rabbit Hole. On behalf of AJ the Ripon Rabbit, Chick Mandela Effect, Michael Musco, Walt House, everyone involved in Ripon Common Sense Radio, as well as our incredible mod team over there on YouTube, and Tom Bayless from Red Shed Studios for providing us with this amazing music. Get down with it, Tom. If you're looking for a custom soundtrack for your next project, make sure you check out Red Shed Studios, links in the description. On behalf of all these folks, ladies and gentlemen, once again, my name is Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. And remember, until next time, stay awake, but dare to dream. Good night, everybody. How? Yeah, that's right. Let's go, Brandon.
Some things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever home. Oh, what a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner. Is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner. Is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion? I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
If you're still here, I would like you guys to join me real quick in a chant, a practice chant that you can use anytime you would like. A chant that says a whole lot in just a couple words, ladies and gentlemen. 1, 2, 3. Really easy. You've heard it before, I'm sure. Let's go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. That's right. One more time, guys. Let's go, Brandon. If you haven't heard it yet, check it out. If you know what it is, keep on keeping on, guys. You guys have a wonderful night. Bye, everybody.